Hello, I thought I would keep it a little bit low-key today and just have a little bit of a chat with you because I haven't done this in a while, and I was going to originally do this as a bookmark video, but I feel like the things I'm going to be talking about today, I did not want to be distracted by food. So this video, as you can tell from the title, is going to be about my thoughts on the Asian representation, that rhymes, in two films that I've watched recently that if you follow me on Instagram or you know me in real life, then you'll know that I have been banging on about this for so long. And the two films in question is To All the Boys I've Loved Before, which is currently on Netflix. It was released last week. It's basically about a teenage girl who is also half Korean, and she writes 5 love letters to her crushes without realizing that it would ever get out, and a mystery person then sends it to these 5 people, and she has to come to terms with these people knowing her feelings and having to deal with her feelings. And I freaking loved it. I wrote an Instagram post about this, but it is a teenage film that I wish I had watched growing up. It was so refreshing to see an Asian lead as somebody who has their own life and has their own love story and goes about everyday things, and isn't cast as a role who is a sidekick or is somebody that only plays out the stereotypical views of being an Asian girl. She had her own life, she had her own feelings, and she was the main character in her own love story, which was just very refreshing to see. And I love that I didn't make certain elements of her ethnic background very apparent in the film. They kind of mentioned things here and there about drinking your coat and her being half Korean, and I think there was like a snippet of her watching a film called 16 Candles, and the male lead, Peter Kavinsky, who is a heartthrob, love him, talks about how racist it was for somebody to be portraying an Asian role. But it was just kind of like gentle prodding, and they didn't make a huge thing about it, which I thought the subtlety of that made it even more intelligent as a film. But apparently, in To All the Boys I've Loved Before, only one production house out of so many others allowed the author to keep having an Asian American as the lead role. All the other production houses asked if they could whitewash the character and have a Caucasian person being cast as Lara Jean instead, even though the book itself centers around the fact that she is Asian American. Yeah, we talk a lot about how important it is to have diversity. We talk about how important it is to have different representations of ethnic minorities on screen and in the mainstream media, but behind the scenes, it's not something that's, you know, starts off with the general public. It starts off from the actual people responsible for making the films that aren't making it happen. You knew the general public loved it, absolutely loved it. So hopefully this paves the way for other films like that, and for people in the industry to think, huh, who would have thought it? It's actually a huge audience, you know, who are Asian American or British born Chinese or Asians around the world who may be interested in seeing Asian people on screen. And then moving on to Crazy Rich Asians, another film that I have been going on and on about for months now. I'm already on the 3rd book. I have been speeding through the books, which are a very light read, very humorous read, especially if you are Chinese, and you'll recognize a lot of things they talk about. And it was just good to read all the books before watching the film, in my personal experience, because I feel like you've got a better grasp of who the characters are, the backstory, the context, and then you can see it play out on the big screen. So for those who don't know about Crazy Rich Asians already and are interested in finding out, it is based on a best-selling series by Kevin Kwan. The protagonist is a girl called Rachel Chu. She was born in China, but she moved over to America when she was about 2, I think, or newborn, and she grew up in America. She's an economics professor, and she meets this guy called Nicholas Young, and they go back to Singapore to meet his side of family. But what she doesn't know is that he is basically Singaporean royalty, and he comes from a very wealthy background, and coming to grips with facing his side of the family and also being thrown into the deep end of what it's like to be in the thick of Asian high society, which is vastly different to anything she's ever experienced in America, and it kind of just shows a bit of an identity crisis and how she deals with it. And also You may already know this, you may not really know this, but it is also the first Hollywood production showing an all-Asian cast for the first time in 25 years, which is staggering, and a staggering amount of years. And it's crazy to think that's basically in my lifetime. I just turned 26, so it's taken me to be 25, well, now 26, for a film like that to be released, which I think is a monumental moment in history, and I'm just glad to be a part of it. I've been playing the soundtrack non-stop since I have come back from the movie. Very, very good. Some classic Chinese bangers in there if you grew up listening to Chinese music. And to me, that film really felt like home to me. It really resonated with me and struck a chord because it talks about having bi-identities and bicultural identities of being, in this case, Asian American, but for me, British born Chinese, but also having a family background of being Chinese, growing up with two very, very different worlds. One being the westernized world where we're born and bred, and one being your native mother tongue, Chinese, and also extended family who have their own expectations for you growing up. So it was really good to see both sides of that being played out on screen, and just being able to identify and connect with both sides and not having to feel like you have to pick one side, because it's not simply one or the other. Both parts are very, very integral to the core being of who we are. I am. It just felt like, well, it just felt more to me than a film. If you couldn't tell, I'm very emotional about this. What else did I put on here? There are a few things in the film that I I'm glad that they did choose to leave in the film, and one of them is to show how different families are when you're from a Chinese background to when you are in a westernized background. Mostly, there's one thing in particular when Nick's mum, Eleanor Young, talks about how the American dream is to put yourself first, is to chase your passions, is to chase your dreams, and how that's vastly different from the Chinese way of thinking, which is you pretty much put yourself last. Anything you want, your dreams, your personal passions, are not something that are counted towards and respected. Your family is first, and it's always the main priority, and your parents' expectations of you, giving back to your elders, and all of those things are, you know, integral to being Chinese, which is the complete opposite to what we're taught in Western society. And to me, that was something I think I've addressed before, but it is something I've had troubles with growing up, because there are stereotypical views and there are parental expectations of, you know, having a good academic background, growing up to find a career path that, you know, usually belongs in the academic world, or being a doctor or being economics, and things like being in the media is pretty much still kind of frowned upon. I'm very fortunate that my parents now understand what I'm doing and they are supportive, but I understand that's not the case for everyone, and it is very hard growing up battling those two different sides of you. I also like that they showed all the different ways of how you never quite feel enough. And if you've watched the film, there's a particular scene, which I won't talk too much about, where Eleanor had a talk with Rachel on the stairs, and that scene, oh, I actually had like tears in my eyes, like threatening to come down, because it just felt so, I felt like I was there in a weird way. A question your inadequacy to be as part of a family or be as part of somebody else's family because of things that are really kind of outside of your control as well. There are a lot of different factors that you as an individual cannot control, specifically with what happened before you were born. But yeah, these kind of things are kind of been up for discussion, and I am aware that it isn't just Asian cultures that will have this, and then I know lots of other different cultures will probably have this element as well, but I can only obviously speak from my personal experience. I feel like anybody who has a similar background to me, who is Chinese but born outside of China and growing up in a westernized or different society, this will resonate with you as a film, and I just very highly encourage watching. There's a point which I know has always been discussed on social media, is that Crazy Rich Asians shouldn't also be synonymous with Chinese culture, which is being portrayed in the books and in the film specifically. particularly being Singaporean doesn't always just mean having the Singaporean Chinese, because there are so many other elements from what I know to Singaporean culture. But I know that Singaporean is, you know, very, very diverse. They're known for having many, many different cultures within Singapore, so it would have just been good to see more of that. And I understand that one book cannot speak for every single Asian culture, and it's also a starting point and a conversation starter hopefully for other Asian cultures to be represented on screen, and that can only really talk about one side and one group. But yeah, it would have just been very, very cool in the future to see other representations on the screen as well, and not just the Chinese culture and an element of Singaporean culture. But being British-born Chinese and having a Chinese background, for me it was just really, really great to see the culture displayed on the screen that is different to the view that you see on other mainstream media platforms before, and the stereotypes, and it was just so cool in a Hollywood production to be able to really enjoy and be proud of your ethnic backgrounds, like things from the Chinese culture, the amazing music that comes from the 50s and the 80s and present day. They talk about obviously the dumpling scene was my favorite scene. They talk about making dumplings, and then they show all the clothes. It just, every part of it, it was just so beautiful. It is a visual masterpiece, and I know that the sequel has already been announced because I've been stalking everybody on Instagram about any news about Crazy Rich Asians. So I am already very excited for the second film. I kind of wish it could be out straight away. And on a side note, the cast obviously is amazing, but in particularly Gemma Chan is an absolute goddess, an actual goddess on the screen. Every time she came on, I was just like sewn into her. She just carries such a air of elegance and class, and she's so softly spoken, but you can just tell she's such a strong person, very strong character. Astrid is my favorite character in the books as well, and it was just perfect to have Gemma Chan being cast as her, because she is Astrid, and her performance was just great. I love Gemma Chan and Astrid very much. These are my kind of very initial thoughts on Crazy Rich Asians, and To All the Boys I've Loved Before. I have been raving about it. I have been loving it, and I just wanted to share my positive thoughts about how great it is to see more Asian representation on the screen. For me, being a 26-year-old woman, that's so weird, it's just exceeded my expectations, and it kind of made me way more emotional than I initially thought. I already knew that I was going to absolutely love it, but I didn't realize to this extent, and I just knew as soon as I watched it that I wanted to make a video about me rambling on about how much I loved it. I hope you enjoy this video. If you did, please give a big thumbs up, and if you are new to this channel, hi, I'm Shu. I should probably introduce myself in the beginning. Please consider subscribing for more lifestyle, food and travel videos, and I shall see you in my next video. Thank you so much for watching this video, and yes, I'll see you soon. Bye.